Hello. This is my um, submission for week 10 participation for neurobiology class. So getting right into it, the first question on chapters 7 and 8 of Luke, what does anxiety look like in an individual, both socially and clinically? So socially, anxiety makes it tough to live with and love with both partners. When one partner is anxious and the other one's not, it's very difficult to deal with, very difficult to talk about. It can cause frustration and manifest feelings of fear in both. If one person is not anxious and the other one is, it could cause the other one to be anxious. The other one could be frustrated. It's difficult to have empathy for those who have anxiety. Sayings like, stop worrying about it. It's not that deep. It's nothing to fret about. Those phrases are common socially. And anxiety can also be learned from social observation. So if somebody is feeling normal and then they notice others are scared or others are worried and they notice anxiety, groupthink can happen and anxiety can be learned. And moving on to clinically, social anxiety disorder can be caused from anxiety, can come from anxiety, as well as disinhibited social engagement disorder. These are highly comorbid with panic disorders and mood disorders. Anxiety is. Um, Clinically, it causes restlessness, fatigue, concentration issues, muscle tension, irritability, and sleep issues. And all those things affect your social cues because when you don't have good sleep and you're irritable, you're less enjoyable socially. So, how do clinicians assist clients in doing what will help their depression when this is the last thing that clients are inclined to do? There's narrative, which is where you view the person as a person with a set of behaviors, and then like ask what they'd like to address at an energy level. Ask what they would like to address, such as a person's energy level, change their that part of their depression, and then just kind of focus on the baseline, and have an idea in their head about narratively, ideally, what would this look like if it was well done. And then also being mindful of depression symptoms. When you do have more energy, what's it look like? When you do feel good, what does your body feel like? So being mindful. And another thing that clinicians can do is mirror people's affect. Sometimes overreact to their affect. So if someone's coming in very depressed and very down and sullen, you can mirror that. And then once you've mirrored that for a while, you can turn around and be baseline and be normal and be happy and sort of explain how that, explain by showing how you can go from down here to up here. And then also, yeah, give them mindfulness strategies to be able to be grounded and observe when systems or symptoms arise when you see them. How can counselors apply findings from neuroscience sessions without lecturing or overwhelming anxious or depressed clients? You want to explain it clearly, concisely, and all as they have questions. Don't overwhelm them. Don't just speak at them. All as they have questions. Understand too that some of the things you're saying might not be able to be comprehended by the client, and that some things work better than others. Stop the modality entirely if you don't think if they say it's not working, and constantly ask for feedback, because you could be thinking it's working and then you ask for feedback and they're like, I don't want to do this. So always ask on responses on how you're doing with the modality and if you potentially need to pivot, and also explain it that what you're doing in a conversational way so they don't think they're being lectured in like segments instead of just sitting there and overwhelming someone with information. Do it conversationally. And then so going on to Perrin Sadlovitz, how can brain changes be associated with what be understood as pre-existing brain damage, and what implications does it have for traumatized children? Um, so rarely are multiple time points of evaluation considered when talking about neglect being misunderstood, and rarely is the timing of trauma carefully examined. So they're just looking at the symptoms. They're looking at the outcomes as a measurement of brain damage, and not that it could have maybe happened before. Completely focused on diagnostic criteria. They're just looking at the symptoms rather than the causes. So the implications of this are that it categorizes individuals on the symptoms and signs. and doesn't talk about their physiological mechanisms, um, or why it happened. It just says, looks at them and says, "This is what's going on with you. You meet A, B, and C criteria." And then this gives them a diagnosis for the rest of their life. And it labels them as developmentally challenged when it could have been caused environmentally from neglect. It gives the neglecting parents a free pass and no accountability. Oh, my kid just has brain damage, not my fault. Um, they were born with it, and then they're have no accountability from neglecting them. And instead of focusing on healing from that neglect, the kids now have to deal with their cognitive issues and the fact that they were born with it and dealing with the symptoms instead of acknowledging that it wasn't their fault. And so, how can nonverbal approaches like music or movement or massages reach parts of the brain that therapies cannot? So, specifically, music works well with autistic people. They develop different uh, interests in specific areas, so music can work well there. Music was the first human language. Babies learn to understand rhythm and tones of voice, for example, before they understand the content. So you can't do that in talk therapy to children because music is uh, known to be one of the first things that we learned. You can sing tunes to your baby, suggesting that music and song play an important role in infant development. So even though babies may not understand words or comprehension, tunes and rhythms work. And movement classes help keep a sense of rhythm, help brains keep a beat. The example in the book was that nobody rocked the kid when he needed it, and it created insert attachment. So movement classes and stuff create that attachment. Lastly, 2 or 3 concepts that were new aspects of knowledge. The first one was that I actually didn't know that anxiety triggers your fight, flight, or freeze response. I thought this was only introduced when you were shown to danger. And I can definitely understand how this is detrimental to brain health if you're constantly on guard and your brain has to make the decision if you fight, flight, or freeze. And then also, I understand that neurologically, depression is the most common psychiatric illness. I didn't know that at all. The most common is crazy. That's a lot. And then also that major depressive disorder is more prevalent in women. We always talk about men's mental health. I didn't know that it was more common in women. So, yep.